Welcome to the Chrisman Commentary, Daily Mortgage News Podcast. I'm your host, Robbie Chrisman. Topics on today's episode include just what happened to that housing shortage, why oil prices continue to move rates, and my interview with Lennar's Laura Escobar on leadership, housing trends, people-first leadership, and the ongoing evolution of diversity and mentorship. Here, take a listen to a quick preview.
Today is the second to last day of Women's History Month. And as someone who has been deeply involved in mentoring and supporting women in the industry, I see it from afar. I know many women in the industry that talk about you specifically as being such a great mentor and supporter of women. I can't mean that more sincerely. What does Women's History Month mean to you personally, and what progress still needs to happen in mortgage leadership?
Oh, I love this question. I love this month. Women's History Month is both a moment of reflection for me and a moment of responsibility, Robbie. I am so deeply grateful for the women and men who believed in me early in my career. They opened doors that I may not have even known how to open myself. So the perspective has become even more meaningful for me as a mother of two absolutely amazing young women. When I look at them, I'm so encouraged by the opportunity ahead of them, and motivated to make sure to help their paths that are shaped by possibility, by confidence, by choice. We've made meaningful progress in our industry. There are more women in leadership roles, more visible role models, and greater focus on mentorship and development. I have to say, I'm so happy to see this. I strongly believe progress happens when we build each other up. Men have been some of our most important allies, Robbie, and real advancement comes from leaders who support and sponsor talent, who advocate for each other and create an environment where everyone can grow. For me, this month is about shared success. It's about investing in people. It's about strengthening teams and yet building an industry that's better for the next generation. That's our responsibility.
There's a big shift going on in mortgage banking about being proactive versus reactive. Obviously, it's better to act rather than respond, especially when it comes to driving business. And if you're looking for a system of action for financial services, look no further than RelCu. It's an all-in-one agentic platform driving conversion, retention, and cross-sell across mortgage and deposits. Close more and chase less with RelCu. To learn more, visit RelCu, that's RelCu.com. Do you remember when everyone was talking about the lack of housing inventory as a problem for buyers? Those days are long gone. There are now nearly 50% more sellers than buyers as mismatch widens to a record 630,000. Of course, this is depending on price point and location. And what they're selling isn't necessarily new. Per the American Community Survey, it seems the median owner-occupied house is about 43 years old. As anyone from the building profession will tell you, at any given time, the 5 L's, that's labor, lots, laws, lumber, and lending, can create problems. Some will say there's a 2.5 million unit mismatch, and that isn't necessarily a shortage, just the wrong housing stock in the wrong locations at the wrong price points. Originators keep a keen eye on product mix. And this is more about mortgages than houses, but last week's MBA application survey showed that the refinance share of mortgage activity decreased to 49.6% of total applications from 52.3% the previous week. The adjustable rate mortgage, or ARM, share of activity is running around 8%. The FHA share of total applications is about 20%, VA around 16%, and the USDA share of total applications is less than 1%, but obviously meaningful in rural areas. As the conflict in the Middle East doesn't appear to be ending anytime soon, and with the White House continuing to send mixed signals about the status of the war, investors have grown increasingly concerned that higher oil prices will lead to faster inflation and cripple the global economy. March began dovish and ended hawkish, with the shifting macro narrative obviously being a function of the war in the Middle East. And U.S. Treasuries ended Friday mixed, leaving yields little changed for the week despite hitting new 2026 highs, as early losses driven by global market weakness and Iran-related tensions were tempered by the news that President Trump would delay potential strikes to allow for negotiations. The final reading from the University of Michigan Consumer Sentiment for March fell to 53.3, below levels from a year ago, and tellingly conveying large drops in sentiment among consumers with middle and higher incomes who are dealing with rising gas prices and falling stock prices. For today's interview, I wanted to welcome back to the show Lennar Mortgage's Laura Escobar to talk about leadership, housing trends, people-first leadership, and the ongoing evolution of diversity and mentorship. She's president of Lennar Mortgage, the mortgage lending subsidiary of Lennar. And seeing as today is the second to last day of Women's History Month, I wanted to bring her on to talk about her commitment to understanding and uplifting underserved women and minorities. She serves on multiple advisory boards and committees and is probably taking a big, deep breath after her role as chair of the Mortgage Bankers Association last year.
You spent the past year helping guide the industry as chair of the Mortgage Bankers Association. Now that you're back in post-chair life, quote unquote, what perspective did that experience give you about where mortgage banking is headed over the next few years?
So, Robbie, serving as MBA chair gave me a broad and deep view of where mortgage banking is really, truly headed. Coming out of that experience, and what an experience, I have to tell you, I see our future being shaped by three forces, and I'll expound on them. But first, it's going to be simplification through technology, affordability solutions, and talent. And I believe that AI is accelerating all three. So first, let me just talk to you about simplification. The industry knows, we are well aware that we have to make the mortgage process easier. We have to make it faster, and we have to make it more intuitive for our consumers. So AI has a real potential here, from automating document review, underwriting support, improving quality control, and customer communication, right? So when it's used responsibly, AI can help reduce all that friction, shorten cycle times, but really allow our teams to focus on higher value, human-centered work. Next is affordability. Affordability continues to be the defining challenge of this cycle. And it's where we have to be willing to think differently. Affordability is not going to be solved with one lever or one part of the ecosystem. God knows we have been beating this one up all year. It requires creativity. It's going to require collaboration and real commitment to opening doors for our families. So that means looking beyond traditional approaches, rethinking product design, rethinking pricing strategies, incentives. And, as a home builder, we think about all these things and how we partner across housing, lending, policy. It also means being disciplined about reducing costs. We have to be responsible and reduce costs. But at the same time, we have to encourage across the value chain everyone to do the same, because right now, more than ever, every dollar matters to our buyers. Affordability is a shared responsibility, and people just need to know that. Every single one of us has to step up, and progress happens fast when we approach it with urgency, with openness, and willingness to innovate together. Mm-hmm. And last, I'll tell you talent. As we well know, AI is changing the skill set that our industry needs. It doesn't replace leadership, doesn't replace empathy or accountability. In fact, it makes those qualities probably more important. The companies that win will be the ones that invest in upskilling their people, using AI as a tool to empower their teams, not to overwhelm them. At Lennar, we're doing something that we are throwing out prompts, and we're saying, play with Copilot and tell me what you come back with. And as a company, we're starting to peel back the onion and showing people what they can do with AI. We have to build leaders who can blend technology, strategy, and heart. The market's going to continue to evolve, but the opportunity is clear. And I'll just reiterate those. Simplify the experience, solve for affordability, and develop people who can lead confidently in an AI-enabled future.
I like that you're talking about the intersection of the theoretical and the practical. Where can we meet on these three different items? Because that's where you actually enact true change. And at Lennar, you also sit at the intersection of home building and lending. I guess maybe intersectionality is the theme of today's podcast. What are you seeing right now in terms of housing supply, affordability, buyer behavior that the broader mortgage industry might not fully appreciate yet from your seat specifically?
Yeah. Working with a home builder definitely gives us a real-time view of the consumer behavior. And buyers today they're incredibly thoughtful and pragmatic. They're still motivated by home ownership, Robbie, but they're much more payment focused. Obviously, with rates at where they are and where the situation is at the economy, but payment focused and value driven, much more than in past cycles. One thing the broad industry may underestimate is how new construction is helping solve for affordability in creative ways. The builders are having to, and I said this earlier, they have to adapt to how they think about the product now, the pricing, be much more intentional about size, about design, and really the overall value. The flexibility is helping align new homes with today's borrowers' expectations, but it's creating opportunity even more in a constrained rate environment, right? We're seeing borrowers who have paused, but they're slowly re-engaging once they feel confident in that monthly payment. It reinforces that affordability just isn't about rates, it's about options, it's about education and really partnership across the entire ecosystem.
And in conjunction with that, you've often talked about leading with the heart in an industry that can be very numbers driven. How do you translate empathy and relationship building into real business results and stronger teams?
Probably for me, leading with heart doesn't mean ignoring the numbers. It means understanding the people behind them. I get this question all the time. When associates feel seen, they feel supported, and trusted, performance follows. Period. Leading with heart comes from lived experience. I've been in this industry a long time, long enough to know that people bring their whole selves to work. They bring their families, their challenges, their ambitions. And when leaders recognize that, something powerful happens. I've seen it firsthand. When associates feel genuinely cared for and respected, they show up differently. They take more ownership. It's like meeting in the morning, having a cup of coffee, and asking, how is the family? It's supporting one another. It's more willing to push through hard moments together. And we're going through some hard times. Empathy isn't soft, it's practical. It shapes how we communicate during change, how we coach, how we respond to someone when they're struggling or growing into a new role. It doesn't have to be all bad, right? Some of the strongest teams that I've led were built on trust and connection. When people know that you value them as individuals, not just as producers, they're more engaged, they're more resilient, they're more committed to doing the great work for customers and for each other. In the end, I'll say it again, leading with heart isn't separate from results. It's one of the most reliable ways to achieve them.
Keep in mind when I ask this question, you brought up your tenure first, not me. And you've spent more than 3 decades in mortgage banking. You've led teams of more than 1,000 associates across the country. What leadership lessons from that journey matter most today for executives navigating what's now become a tougher market cycle?
Boy, hasn't it. Challenging markets reveal what kind of leaders we truly are. I see it time and time again. One of the most important lessons that I personally have learned is that consistency matters far more than charisma, especially when conditions are uncertain. Your team is watching how you show up. My team watches how I listen, how I respond when the pressure is really on. The best leaders don't lead in isolation. They actively seek out perspectives from across the organization, from different roles, from different regions, from experiences, because that's really where the real insight lives. Listening closely doesn't slow you down. It helps you make better decisions, but listening has to be paired with action. I'll tell you, if you don't move, it's going to come back and bite you. In moments like these, teams need leaders who are willing to take informed action, even without perfection. That's the most important thing that I can say is people are not waiting for perfection. They're waiting for leadership. They're not waiting for ideal conditions because they may never come. And equally as important, I would say, is the willingness to pivot. Just like markets change, assumptions get tested, and what worked yesterday may not work tomorrow. It may not even work today. Strong leaders, right, have to stay grounded. They have to stay grounded in strategy, but really flexible in execution. They adjust quickly. They explain the why. I am really, really, really empowered to tell everybody, explain the why. Bring your teams along through change, but explain the why. And clear communication, and transparency, for me as a leader, is non-negotiable. People don't expect us to have all the answers, but they do expect honesty, they expect direction, and they expect clarity about what's coming next. And lastly, I'll say optimism matters. Not blind optimism, but confidence rooted in reality. When leaders acknowledge challenges while they're reinforcing belief in the path forward, it keeps the teams focused, it keeps them engaged and moving ahead together.
Last night, my dad and I went to watch One Battle After Another in theaters, which just one picture of the year. And very early on in that movie, they use the phrase "one battle after another," which I think it's always cool when they use the title of a movie in the movie. Well, you use the Chrisman Commentary catchphrase, "consistency without charisma." And let me tell you, we've been doing that for years over here at Chrisman. So I'm glad you're also on board with how we're working. Yeah. Laura, I always enjoy speaking with you. I'm already looking forward to the next time. Until then, best of luck, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
The Federal Reserve is once again attempting to shrink its massive agency mortgage-backed securities holdings, which built up to $2.7 trillion during pandemic-era quantitative easing. It wants to move back toward an all-treasury balance sheet, but at the current passive runoff pace, it could take over a decade. Despite a roughly 26% reduction since 2022, the portfolio remains heavily concentrated in low coupon and 30-year MBS, meaning any active sales, though unlikely, would disproportionately pressure those segments. The feared risk of rapid prepayments flooding the market has diminished as rising treasury yields have pushed mortgage rates higher and sharply reduced refinancing activity. This Easter week's calendar includes month-end tomorrow and March payrolls on Friday's abbreviated Good Friday session, when the bond market will close at noon, though we'll have both a commentary and a podcast for you. Other data of note includes Fed surveys, house prices, Chicago PMI, consumer confidence, JOLTS, ADP retail sales, manufacturing and services PMIs, business inventories, and trade. Today's loan data point is Dallas Fed manufacturing for March, coming out midday, and it shouldn't move rates. There will also be some short duration treasury auctions and remarks from Fed Chair Powell and New York Fed President Williams. We begin the week with agency MBS prices better than Friday's close by 1/8 to 1/4, the 2-year yielding 3.88, and the 10-year yielding 4.39 after closing last week at 4.44%, up 5 basis points over the course of last week. Let's wrap up with a joke and some housekeeping. A rooster wakes up early Sunday morning. He sticks his head out of the chicken coop and sees all these multicolored eggs all over the barnyard. Takes a look at the eggs, takes a look at the hens, takes another look at the eggs, takes one more look at the hens, thinks about it for a minute, and then he walks across the barnyard and kicks the daylights out of the peacock. Thanks again to RelCu for sponsoring today's podcast. RelCu is the all-in-one agentic platform driving conversion, retention, and cross-sell across mortgage and deposits. To learn more, visit RelCu, that's RelCu.com.